Okay. Happy birthday, Ricardo Legorreta. 1931, 2011, he lived for 80 years. And now his office is continued by, I think, his son. At one, for the past years before he died, the firm, the office, their atelier was called Legorreta and Legorreta. So I imagine it was him and his son. Anyway, so he was a Mexican architect. He was a prolific designer of private houses, public buildings, and master plans in Mexico, the United States of America, and some other countries. As you can see, he was born on May 7th. He was awarded the prestigious UIA Gold Medal in 1999, the AA, this is the American Institute of Architecture Gold Medal in 2000, and the Premium Imperiale in 2011. And by the way of this, to entice you, to provoke you, I have to tell you that there is also a Romanian who received this prize, as the director of the theater in Sibiu. A few years ago, I think it is this prize because he declared that for 1 hour, the emperor of Japan, in an incredible ceremony, very dignified, offered him a prize, and I think it's this one. And on that occasion also, Japan signed a contract with the, now I'm a little bit patriotic, so to speak, because I am from Sibiu, signed a contract with the theater in Sibiu to represent theater at the Olympics in 2020, but that Olympics probably takes place this year. And, you know, it is Japan's, I guess it's not the only country, but they bring in culture as well. And in the name of theater is the theater in the little town called Sibiu. And that's because of this man, Kyriak. And why do I mention this? Because it is possible to achieve excellence today in all fields. You just have to have high aspirations. And the results will come. Of course, you know, for some it comes, for others it doesn't, but if you don't try, it will certainly not come. So anyway, you see, this is a very prestigious award, Premium Imperiale. He got it, Legorreta, in 2011 in the field of architecture. This was the man, and maybe I should say this is the man, because in my opinion, good artists, good writers, good musicians, good anything, they don't actually die when they die. He was really quite accomplished, and you know, it was very, very hard for me to choose some works to show them to you. Interesting, that painting behind him in this picture, you know, he is probably here getting closer to being 80, is some kind of a Mexican surrealism influenced by Giorgio de Chirico. I think if I look at the left side of the painting, there is a truly you know, Mexico is a very interesting country, and it's not at all that country made of thieves and adventurers and drug dealers and so on. They might have, of course, a dark side as well, but so does the United States, and so does any country. But there is culture there, and they have an interesting tradition in architecture as well, and in art. Here he is as a young, maybe a little bit cockier stance, but you know, considering how much he built and how well he built actually, you know, maybe a certain cockiness is not totally unjustified. Now I'll show some sketches and some drawings by him. Well, you know, the drawings, maybe they are not exceptional, but considering how much he built, you know, maybe it's not even so important. I usually start with drawings, with sketches. He was an architect, maybe less an artist, although he practiced also landscape architecture, and there is a dialogue between the interior and the exterior in his buildings that is worth mentioning. But what is truly worth mentioning is his very, very vivid color that he uses in his architecture. In this sense, he's probably the most chromatic architect of, I don't know, maybe in all modernity. Luis Barragan, his countryman, also used color, but Luis Barragan didn't have public commissions of large scale as Legorreta had. So on the good side is the very, very powerful chromatic aspect of his work. On the less fortunate side, I would say that sometimes it bothered me that I saw very explicit the influence of Luis Barragan on him. Luis Barragan was an architect who was born with approximately 30 years before Legorreta, and he got the Pritzker Prize, but he built much less. Legorreta built maybe 10 times more than Barragan. And you'll understand that he had something to say. And, you know, we see here in plan almost the arrival of, or the suggestion for a cross. Even here, although it is a little bit off, the cross appears often in his work. And you'll see also a cathedral he built. An interesting architect, I would say. But some of the commercially successful works do bother me a little because they are, you know, a little bit complacent for my taste in relationship with capitalism, especially North American capitalism. Now we begin with his first work. But I started chronologically, but after a while I got lost. I knew that if I would go through all the works chronologically, it would take me 1 week to make the PowerPoint presentation. So I stopped, and then I just chose at random almost his best works, in my opinion. So this was built in 1964. So he was 30 something. And this is also a name that must be remembered, Matthias Goeritz, an important figure in the art and architecture in Mexico. This building is not bad. I mean, you know, it's 1964, laboratories, but I think it has skill and it has simplicity, so it's thoroughly modern, but at the same time, it's not a dry modernity at all. What I notice at the architects who interest me is that they never, ever give up on some kind of ornamentation. Here we look at this fence. It is pure ornamentation, you know, so they are not afraid of uniting the white modernity, but even here there is a level of, if I am to call it ornamentation, if we look at the windows and also, you know, these you know, supporting vertical elements which are not vertical. So there is a sensibility here that is Latin, that is, you know, from the South. From South America or Central America and not so much North America, and maybe not even Europe. Oscar Niemeyer used to similar, you know, supporting, I mean, you know, structural elements at the base of an apartment building in Berlin that I visited with some students. And you know, they do have a sensibility which is different from the Anglo-Saxon world. On the other hand, if we are to become also a little bit patriotic, what else do we see here but a fragment of the infinity column or the endless column by Brancusi? We also see something, you know, rhythmical, although it might not have been at all influenced directly by Brancusi, but the latest skyscraper that the studio gang, Genie Gang, built is also has this, you know, growing tower from rhomboidal figures, just like here. I imagine these, you know, these architects, they know about art a lot, and Brancusi is truly a reference. I know that Wolf Prix, for example, for him, and again, you forgive my patriotism, but Wolf Prix said that Brancusi was the best artist of the 20th century. I don't know. I don't know if I would go so far, but there are admirers for Brancusi, that's for sure. But this is, I think, an excellent building. You know, 1964, a young Riccardo Legorreta. Now, 1967, an educational building in also, I think, in Mexico, but I couldn't find pictures for that one. This is 1967. I don't know this one. Sometimes I couldn't find pictures, or I didn't know how to search for them. Maybe I should have searched from the website. By the way, if the work of Legorreta interests you, you can go to his website. You just type in his name, and the office is still active. And I think his son is continuing his activity. It's a vigorous architecture. It's a clearly modern, but there is also some suggestion of a sympathy or empathy towards the tradition, the constructive traditions of Mexico. And, you know, this is, I think, a quality that his modernism is clear cut, so to speak, and is almost of an international nature, but also there is something Mexican about his work, most of his works. From 1968, another almost surreal work here. You know, I don't even know if I understand everything here. You know, it's surreal. It's because of the usage of colors. Also, again, we have this kind of fragmentation of an ornamental nature. And then, I mean, it's a collage of various things, and yet it is simple. It's not, you know, it's not, you know, too busy or anything. So you can do a lot with the fence. No, I mean, it's just a fence here, but it becomes, you know, potent and powerful aesthetically speaking. So I don't know if President Trump was aware of the culture, the modern culture of Mexico. You know, there is this arrogance in North America that its southern neighbor is just a country of thieves and drug addicts and so on. It's not so at all. I mean, look here. You know, just at this picture. And you know, these worlds and the colors, and You know, in my opinion, it shows the sophistication, and we are just at the beginning. You will see some buildings that I think you would like. 1968. This is an office building. Look at this office building. You know, supported just in the corner with a core element, which probably contains the circulations. Otherwise, the building is almost, you know, flying. It's defying gravity to a good extent. Now, yes, the aesthetics do belong to its time, but it's more to it, I think. It's a skillful building. And it's not a typical office building, you know, the one that the United States is filled with, you know, just glass all around, or even the tower that Bjarke Ingels built recently. Yes, it has that stair that mimics a certain tower, you know, but in the Islamic culture, but essentially it's all glass around. Here we have a certain richness of the facade. Not too much, but it is to be noticed. It's not a you know a simplistic facade. 1968. This is a hotel, Colonia Azures. I hope I have. Ah, we already saw it, but I'm a little bit confused. It had a certain, or there are two different functions for two different buildings in the same complex. But this we saw. This one we didn't see. Now I guess that picture was misplaced, and I apologize. So unfortunately, I don't have other pictures with this, but even this picture, I think it shows the power of architecture. And yeah, you will see another hotel built by him that is quite good. Now the Kodak factory in this place in Mexico from 1985, but I know I didn't. Why I didn't? It's sometimes it's difficult to discover the works because, for example, in the case of the Kodak factory, they also built one in 1970s, and that one was not by him, and I got confused. So sorry, I have no pictures with this one, but I have pictures with this cathedral in Managua, which is quite interesting actually. Look at this. You know, it's yes, it's rhetorical, but it's the house of God. It's a cathedral, but it's a creative cathedral. You know, you might like it or you might not like it, but you cannot deny, you know, its originality. You know, the sign of the cross is included in the anatomy of the columns, and he is not afraid to use color here also. Otherwise, I guess it's just apparent concrete. Um, SOS brutalismus. The entrance is, you know, simple but effective, and yeah. What can we say? I mean, look at the true scale. You wouldn't expect when you see this that actually, you know, it's quite big. And look at these people, you know, populating the roof of the cathedral. I like this picture very much because it's the dialogue between you know the human beings and the divine, you know, and the playfulness of the human beings, and you know the rhythmical sequence of the domes. It's something that I like here, and I think he did a good job. Well, he didn't choreograph this movement here, but he did the building. And again, I think you, the young architects of Romania, you should fight to have a different conception in architecture, in the architecture related to what is called the sacred. It is not inspiring, and it is not acceptable even what is happening. We are filling the country with nonsensical churches. Sorry for saying it, but architecturally they are simply insufficient. Anyway, this is the plan of the cathedral, and you know, even the plan is nice, you know, in its simplicity graphically. It's a nice work, you know. It's a creation. That's what it is. Look at the two crosses, you know, the cross of light and the cross on the ceiling, which is rotated, and I like this very much. I never saw something like this, you know, and yes, it's an interesting idea, you know. It's the duality of crosses somehow. Now, I don't know. I mean, these domes, you know, these cupolas, they do look a little bit like something else. Maybe, I don't know. But otherwise, the building, I think, is well done. And, you know, the concrete brings vigor to the building. Truly, I don't know what you think, but I imagine you think in the same way. When you are faced or you are facing, you are contemplating a creative architecture, you feel joyous. I mean, it's maybe not the greatest modern building for a cathedral, okay, but you see an attempt to express something original, and you know, it's very, very important. Otherwise, architecture becomes unbearable if it's not creative. Truly, we must fight for a creative architecture through all means. Because because when you use your imagination, your culture, your training, everything you went through in a creative way, you bring joy not just in yourself, but also in society, in the others, I think. Okay, now a library he built in San Antonio in Texas in the United States. Look at this color. I love this color. Why shouldn't a library be red? I mean red, like fire. That's how knowledge should be, no? Like fire, intense. If Heraclitus was right that fire was the beginning of all things, he said fire was the father of all things, then the redness of fire should be also, you know, part of that, you know, and redness is also love. It's fire, it's love, it's passion. I think Heraclitus might have been right. For him, fire was truly the generating force of everything, and the relationship between fire and passion is easy to observe. And saying passion, we could say love. Yes, love, red, knowledge, curiosity, passion. That's what we need. So in this sense, I think the library by Legorreta is a nice thing. And, you know, it's maybe the only red library in the world. He is known, as I said, he is famous for his strong sense of color. And we cannot deny the modernity. You know, maybe that modernity is a little bit too obvious, but I still think, you know, the people of Texas in San Antonio who commissioned Legorreta did well. Now, in Pershing Square in Los Angeles, he collaborated with this landscape architect, Laurie Olin, and you recognize immediately, you already, I think, have a feeling about what Ricardo Legorreta is as an architect. This tower is also, you know, his work. He received a lot of commissions in the United States. So he might not have received from President Trump if he was president when Legorreta lived, but he received from other people, and I'm glad he did. Unfortunately, and this is a criticism, I agree. There are too obvious references to Luis Barragan here with this water coming through this wall. It's simply too explicit. The inspiration he found in Luis Barragan. Otherwise, and I don't think he needed this, you know. It looks to me like he was almost obsessed by Barragan. But this is interesting. I don't know what is its function, but you see the importance of the sculptural, what is sculptural, what is vigorous, even if it doesn't have a function, even if it doesn't have a door, an entrance door, even if it doesn't have you know, a usable interior space, it's still interesting, you know. Maybe it's superfluous, but we read over yesterday what Voltaire said, that the superfluous is a necessary thing. I'm not saying it's superfluous. I don't know. Maybe it has a function. But I remember a tower that John Haydock drew, and I've heard him saying that Peter Eisenman, his friend, actually commented on it and said, "Hey, Peter, but this one doesn't have an entrance door. How could I enter the building?" And apparently John Haydock replied to him, "You can't, Peter, but my friends can." Well, you know, it was rhetorical because Peter Eisenman, was a friend of him as well, and they were both colleagues in what was called the New York Five. That is Michael Graves, Peter Eisenman, John Haydock, Charles Guithmy, and Richard Meyer. Those five architects, the New York White, as they were called because they all loved whiteness, although later on Michael Graves used a lot of color, unfortunately in a postmodernistic key. But by the way of the New York Five, Louis Kahn once was asked, "What do you think about the New York Five, the New York Whites, who were hot at the beginning of the 70s?" And Louis Kahn said, well, he died in 1973, but this interview took place a little bit before he died, of course. And Louis Kahn said, he actually called them Playboy architects, and he said something very memorable, Louis Kahn. Louis Kahn said, "I prefer to do what is right in the wrong way than to do what is wrong in the right way." And I think this we should remember too. what Kant said. So again, I prefer to do what is right in the wrong way than to do what is wrong in the right way. I think he was taking issue with the aestheticism and maybe excessive intellectualism and even some kind of a perverse playfulness that the New York Five displayed at that time. Anyway, moving forward. So here we have the skyscrapers of San Antonio, and we have, I would say, the more pure prism, opaque as it is, by Legorreta. And here we have the opposite color because it's a play with the dialectics of color. It's a park there as well. And as I mentioned before, he worked with a landscape architect in this case. Yes, this is an architectural pastiche almost, you know, or it's a conscious homage to Luis Barragan. That could be too, who knows? Anyway, unfortunately, there are other such homages to Luis Barragan. In fact, at one moment, I was so disappointed that I deleted 2 pictures of a building which you are going to see, but those pictures are gone because it was almost like a deja vu. It was too much Luis Barragan. But he didn't need to. He was an original architect with his own way of doing things. But I think he was probably fascinated by Barragan. And there are other architects in Mexico who are inspired by Luis Barragan. The Labyrinth Museum of Arts and Sciences. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are now in Mexico. This country that a certain president of the United States depicted as a country of thieves, drug addicts, corruption, and so on. But they have incredible museums like this one, the Labyrinth Museum of Arts and Sciences, you know, to bring them together. And this is already a sign of emancipation and sophistication, not just for art and not just for science, but for both. And also to be labyrinthine, what could be better? It has a tower, this one too, look at this, and look at that water that comes down from that tower. I mean, you tell me, is this not sophistication? I think it is. You know, the abstractness of, I don't even know what it is here, you know, it's the labyrinth. But this is an original work, creatively done in a modern language, in a country which is described, as I said, in very different terms. You know, after all, North America began to build the wall. So to separate itself from this. The one who was retrograde here was not the Mexican, but the president, the former president of the United States, who advocated the cause of so-called beautiful classical buildings for the government. If Trump would have been president for 4 more years, America would have had probably some terrible so-called classical buildings built for the government, because that was the aesthetics that Mr. Trump promoted, you know. And look at the thieves and the drug addicts. They had a much more sophisticated understanding of what architecture is. Now, I'm not saying that all North America was like Mr. Trump, of course not. Nor is the whole of Mexico like Legorreta. But, you know, this was a major effort to build a building for the arts and sciences, a centralized building, and maybe it was even sponsored by and paid for by the government. But it shows a sophistication, you know. It shows an openness towards maybe not radical, but an appreciable amount of modernity. Again, a reference to it infuriates me because he didn't need to really. This is almost, again, it's almost a pastiche of a work by Luis Barragan, much smaller, because Barragan didn't build, as I said, for large public buildings. Here we have doors of curtain, and the tower itself is, I mean, I wish we would have some things like this in Romania too. I also wish we would build something like this, for the arts and sciences. It's a large complex of buildings, actually. It's not just one building. You see there, Labyrinto. It also happens that I love labyrinths. I think we need more labyrinths in the world. And I don't know if you know, but there are probably more, but I know two great cathedrals from the Middle Ages which have engraved in the pavement of in the pavement of the cathedrals, there is a labyrinth at Chartres, at Amiens Cathedral, and the labyrinth is not a Christian symbol at all. It's almost maybe pagan. It's very, very interesting that two of the most famous medieval cathedrals didn't reject the scandal in a way for faith even of the labyrinth, because the labyrinth expresses not confusion, but you get lost in the maze, you get lost in the labyrinth. So a dogmatic form of faith would not advocate the cause of the labyrinth. But here is not a cathedral, it's a center for the arts and sciences. But I'm glad they built it. And look at this, it's a citadel, it's a civilized, culturally, I think, significant citadel for the arts and sciences. Are there many countries in the world which have something like this? Maybe there are a few more countries, yes, but Mexico is there with strong colors and strong walls. Nice. And look at this, I think even Alvarado would have loved this. Why so many opaque walls? Well, the climate, no, it's warm there, and but I like it. I like this work, and I like that tower, and it's symbolical. They even built a building in Tijuana, which is a destitute place right at the frontier with the United States, where North Americans go for cheap alcohol and prostitutes and so on. And they built in Tijuana. They built a building which is inspired by Etienne Boulet. I mean, there are amazing things that happen in Mexico, really. And, Carmen Pinos, she built in Guadalajara a skyscraper, and there are other skyscrapers. There are interesting things to be discovered in this country. I mean, in Mexico, since we talk about Legorreta. Well, if the country of thieves and drug addicts build something like this, I think there is hope in the world. Now, another center for the arts in Mexico, again, a national center of the arts, So, again, Legorreta with several buildings, actually, it's not just one single building. Uh, what confuses me a little bit is I saw this tower with this color, but I also saw it with a different color. Maybe they repainted it, or I don't know. Anyway, the color maybe itself is not so important if it is this one or the one you see in this picture, but it's the same tower and the same building. He seems to like these domes, you know, these cupolas. It's okay, you know. But this, you know, what he built here is really not inferior to what Arata Isozaki built. I was thought of Arata Isozaki particularly because of this part of the complex of buildings. Isozaki received the Pritzker Prize. Maybe if Legorreta lived longer, he died at 80, maybe he would have received it too, maybe. But it's not important really if he received it or not. But look at these walls. Now, these are not the stones of Machu Picchu, you know, it's just, you know, they are just, is just decorative stone is, and sometimes it's bothering me that he uses the stone even above large openings, and that's not what the stone is made for. But I like the texture of the wall, and you know that there is a tactile quality that is to be noticed. No, without doubt, he was a skillful architect and unafraid to take risks. The very idea to build a national center for the arts shows, I think, a high degree of civility, you know, and you wouldn't expect it, no, from what we see on the glorious HBO movies and the Hollywood, you know, myriad of denigrations of its southern neighbor. We wouldn't imagine that Mexico would have such institutions. But look at the beautiful Mexicans, you know, creating. And I have to tell you, I launch international competitions in architecture. Now, maybe the word international sounds a little bit too emphatic, but they are, you know, I send them out, and I receive often works from Mexico, from Monterrey, which is a city in Mexico. I receive for almost a whole class of architecture students sent their projects. And, you know, look at them here, you know, it's this fervor of creating together something which is very nice. And of course, this happens everywhere in a way. It happens also in our country. But I think this shows, as I said, a level of civilization even that is not to be, you know, negated or deplored. Now, the adrenaline house, we know what adrenaline is, and we know what the house is. Now let's see how the house adrenaline looks like in this place, Soto Grande. I don't know if there is too much adrenaline here. Even the color is not the most intense red as far as I can tell. And the geometry maybe is a little bit too controlled to truly be put under the sign of adrenaline. But anyway, there are some things here that could warm up the blood, so to speak. But I don't know. Maybe its name is a little bit too ambitious. It's an opulent house, an opulent villa. You know, he built for. I mean, this is a problem actually in Mexico because the people who are very rich, they are, in a sickening way rich, and many people are not. But this is also true in the United States. And if you don't believe that money doesn't bring happiness, you can just contemplate the divorce of Melinda Gates and her husband, Bill Gates. So there, I mean, the paradigmatic figure of success, of a couple of success, no, they are divorcing because yes, you could have all the billions in the world, but those are not making sure that you achieve happiness. Obviously they were not happy, that's why they are divorcing after many years of marriage, and they are not so young any longer. On the other hand, what surprises me, I think they had problems that many couples have, especially after they get married. It was even, also Oscar Wilde had some acid comments about marriage, and other people said the same thing, that Oscar Wilde said, you must always be in love. That's why you should never get married. And other people also thought that love is killed by marriage, which is doesn't sound too Christian and too pious, but there is some truth there somehow, an unfortunate truth. Anyway, back to Legorreta. Legorreta called this the adrenaline house. Now maybe that person, that artwork there is indeed animated by adrenaline, but otherwise the house, he has better houses than this one. But it's still, an interesting house because of the chromatics and maybe some landscaping. And look at that water, so clear and so bluish. I mean, it's bluish because of the color of the structure that houses it. But even the landscaping is interesting, it's not an indifferent, of course the vegetation is different from, let's say, the one in our country, but you can tell this is an informed landscaping. It's not, the plants are chosen in a certain way. And, now, this building is in Qatar, in Doha, the Carnegie Mellon. I don't know what HBQ you mean. This is not bad also. It has something a little bit of I and pay, but I imagine, going up and down on this stair doesn't leave you indifferent, especially if you come down, and is this protected, I mean, covered, rather large space. Well, Qatar has all the money in the world, so he could have done anything here. Look, it's a large complex of buildings, and he built in other countries as well. This is the College of Business and Computer Science. Pavilion, Hacienda, Matao. I like this. I don't know what this pavilion is for. I thought it was a house, but he works well with sloping architecture, so to speak, you know, and the proximity of the water and the stone, and I think and you know, this glass is not extensive, so you have these blank walls, which are architecture. You know, the Peter Eisenman called the wall a media, you know, the low media actually. I don't know exactly why he called it low media or media to begin with. But I think this kind of wall was used, for example, by Marcel Breuer in some of his buildings, but not too often we see modern architects using stone, you know, even if it's, you know, just, you know, covering maybe a wall made of concrete. But it is clearly an indication that Legorreta loves stone and loves its texture, loves its tactility, loves its even shape, and introduces it warms up, actually, paradoxically, it warms up the building, although stone is not considered as a warm material or hot material. It's a nice, I think it's a nice work. I just don't know what this pavilion is for, but it's good architecture as far as I can see. Since I mentioned to you that I did travel once to Mexico, and it was just for a week in Acapulco. And I went one evening to a discotheque, and I saw something that I will never forget. I saw a Mexican woman with a Mexican man dancing like I never thought dancing is possible. They were just like fire, like wild vertical snakes. I mean, unbelievable, you know, movement and temperament and dynamism. Incredible, really, absolutely incredible. I'm not, I don't have knowledge in this field, but I was very, very moved by what I saw. It's maybe one day you could travel there too if the pandemic goes away. Yes, it's far away, Mexico, but anyway, nostalgia. Maybe that's all there is, nostalgia. This is the plan, and it's not bad. There's something of, maybe now I'm thinking, who knows, maybe Legorreta, somehow it has something of the Brion Cemetery by Carlos Carpa. I'm beginning to see things, maybe I'm hallucinating. I hope I don't have fever. Okay, now a very commented house he built in South Korea, which was destined for demolition, and there was a big protest. I discovered articles talking about how the Mexicans were fighting to keep that house built by Legorreta in South Korea. And Yeah, it's a good house. It's a, you know, it could have been very easily in Mexico and not in South Korea. But it's one of his better works, I think, in the field of houses, private houses. Some people live well. It's obvious, you know. I mean, not everybody lives in a, you know, a garçoniere in a studio in Titan. You know, some people live like this. It's fine. There is a place, I guess, for everybody under the sky, and you know, some people, I guess, enjoy certain things. But as I just mentioned, it's not a guarantee for happiness at all. Example. And by the way of Bill Gates and Melinda Gates, since I commented on the initiated divorce, once I lived in a house with an architect from Hong Kong. I was hired by an experimental school in East Hampton, New York, and he worked for Bill Gates' house. Well, one of his houses, but the house actually where he lived. And he told me that Bill Gates had 27 bathrooms in his house. He also told me that Bill Gates had a lot of technology in his house, but he didn't want to see it. So he said, if I understood correctly, although I am a little bit puzzled, if indeed I understood correctly, this architect from Hong Kong, well, he was in the United States then, but he came from Hong Kong. He said that somehow Bill Gates told the architects to create furnitures, pieces of furniture in his house. He wanted the kind of to hide the screens of the monitors and TVs and so on to kind of look like wood. But of course, you cannot make the screen of a monitor or a TV look like wood. So what he did, instead, he bought a very old forest of with very old oaks, and the architects were asked to to use the wood of those unfortunate oaks, which were cut down, to create furniture that was hiding behind it the above mentioned technology. So this made me reflect on the fact that the most of the people in Silicon Valley in the United States, where there is a lot of technology and a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of wizards, techno wizards, they live in kind of rather traditional houses with sloping roofs and verandas. So it's almost like a paradox. Einstein himself lived in a house. I'm talking about Albert Einstein. He lived in a house in Princeton, very, quietly traditional, so to speak. So isn't it strange that the promoters of sophisticated theories and the promoters of sophisticated technology actually are very content, very happy to live in very, rather traditional building and not buildings and not so-called futuristic buildings. Now, edificio de escritorios is the edifice, the building for the writers. Now, here again, do we have in Romania a new building for the writers? I mean, who cares about the writers, right? Not the government, not the politicians, not anyone, But in Mexico, in Monterrey, they hired Legorreta to build I would say an impressive complex of buildings just for writers. I think this is beautiful. It shows that the country cares for its culture. You know, I don't think there are many countries in the world that build for the writers. Certainly not something like this. And yes, who would have expected, you know? But I'm very happy that this is happening. Clearly modern architecture, clearly Mexican architecture because of the massive walls, the color of the walls, and I imagine in Mexico the writers are doing well if Legorreta built such a building for them. Now look at the interior. This is not some poor quarters, you know, for the unfortunate writers who barely live. No, there is culture here. There is even money. There is comfort. There is affluence. And look at the building. But the building itself expresses aspiration, expresses cultural ambition. So what was President Trump talking about, really? You know, I mean, it's almost ridiculous building that wall to defend North America against these people. Now, of course, those people who are the recipients of the chance to use this building are not necessarily those who immigrate. In fact, those people who dance so fabulously in that discotheque in Acapulco told me that they never thought of leaving Mexico and they never thought of going to the United States, although they visited, but it never crossed their minds to, you know, to immigrate there. Anyway, interesting building, you know, by Legorreta. And it's again, it's a cultural citadel, just like we saw for the building for arts and sciences, and just as we saw for the building for arts, the National Center for the Arts in Mexico. Do we have something like this in Romania? Of course not. It wouldn't even cross our minds to build for the writers something like this. Now, it is true, Mexico is a bigger country. It has, I think, I don't know, now I'm a little bit confused. It has a very large population, and Mexico City is one of the biggest cities in the world. Not as big as Tokyo. Tokyo, to my amazement, I just found out is twice the size of Romania in terms of population. It has 37 million people. It's unbelievable, no? A city, 37 million people. Yes, almost twice. But this is nice, I think. It's a good work by Legorreta. Now a house in Valle de Bravo in Mexico from 1973. I love this house. I really do. And I don't know if there could be any architect who wouldn't love it. You know, I mean, nature is magnificent. The diagonal, the straight, clear-cut diagonal of the building is. The colors are chosen correctly because the reddishness of the walls is in contrast with the greenness of nature. I envy the people who live there. I'm also happy for them. It's a good work, and it's an early work, actually, an earlier work by Legorreta. And now I'll show you some pictures from his website of this house. It must be paradise, really, to live there. My God, my God. The cross. The cross again. It must be a very pleasant room, really. A great house, constructed landscape. That's what I read. The ideal building site was sought from the sea. In 1981, Ricardo Legorreta built a hotel embedded in the hillside along Mexico's Pacific coast, and it remains unchanged to this day. So now we go to the next work, which is a large hotel he built, also kind of related with the house we just saw, being on a sloping piece of land. Remarkable work from 1981. It's called like this, Las Brisas, Ixtapa in Guerrero, Mexico. And yes, the vegetation is luxurious, luxuriant. Look at the hotel. It's not bad, you know. It's integrated into the landscape, and again he plays with the dialectics, the chromatic dialectics between nature and the building. It must be beautiful here at you know, swimming in this you know, this water, and coming back to a room in this hotel by Legorreta. It's through the color of the ocean is different. You know, it's kind of like this. I'm talking about what I saw in Acapulco. It's very nice. So this was built in 1970, so you know, 50 years ago. But the building is you know, is not to be intimidated by the passage of time at all. I know in Acapulco, Hugo Iglesias, you know, the singer, he had several hotels there and so on. I mean, Mexico does have some beautiful places. Now, why would people want to go to Mars and to the moon when there are things like this on Earth? I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know, and I don't understand. You know, it seems to me that I don't know. There is some kind of a blindness to the beauty of the Earth. Maybe there is some beauty there too, but nothing wrong with the Earth, I think. Casa Los Tecorales is an interesting house. It's a large house again, and it's almost embarrassing when you think that some people live like this and many others very differently. There is injustice in the world, but here I'm not very sure it's a casa, but you see it's almost like a foundation or a museum, or it's a vast complex of all kinds of things. Look at those stones, emerging from the water. Aren't they magnificent? And the trees, and the building itself. There is beauty here, without doubt. This is a sculpture, Of course, these people don't want to immigrate to the States. Why would they? Why would they? It's paradise here, isn't it? I mean, look at this indoor. I had two pictures actually. Yeah, I think yes, an indoor swimming pool. Luxe, calme et volupté, as Baudelaire would say. I don't know about this thing, and it does appear sometimes in his work, either as a perfectly round sphere or, a little bit deformed, but it's a little bit burlesque for my taste. But otherwise, and also this is what I was referring to. Clearly, this stone is a little bit abused, because to hang the stone there above nothing, it's certainly not honoring the weight of the stone properly, structurally speaking. But all in all, it's a nice environment, I think. And again, it shows sophistication, what is emerging here from the water, these columns of various heights, and yeah. But it is clear this is for the privileged. This is not for the proletarians, that's for sure. Nor is this one. I mean, this kind of opulence and civilized comfort, it's hard to find even in the United States. It shows clearly sophistication. It's not just opulence. Like the people who commissioned Tadao Ando to build I think in Monterey, the institute or that school for design. An older lady, she commissioned Tadao Ando, and it's just a pleasant uh, picture to see her and Tadao Ando, cutting the ribbon at the opening of the building. And so again, there is another Mexico, sophisticated, cultured, and yes, rich as well. So I don't know, is this a house, a foundation, a museum, or everything above? Maybe everything above. If we call this a table, it's a beautiful table. That's all I can say. And it's so simple to do, no? I mean, yes, we abused the tree, but other than that, it's a beautiful table. And the simplest to do, no? But again, these fears that show up, I don't know. Anyway, I wish I was there, ignoring the structural problems of the stone or those white spheres. I still wish I was there right now, in fact. Um, Good work, actually, we have to confess. And quite large. I mean, there are all kinds of things happening here. It's a big estate. I mean, just this building, just this building. It could have been a beautiful church somewhere. I don't know what it is, but it looks glorious, surrounded by those trees. Absolutely glorious. And he's not afraid to, bring a stone in the vicinity of this metallic cubicle or cubist window, perhaps. I like it. Greenberg House. We are approaching the end of this presentation on Ricardo Legorreta. This is also a very nice house built in Los Angeles. He built many others. So again, if you are interested in his work, please open his website, Legorreta Architect, and you'll see there are many other works. I love also the beauty of the photographs, the simplicity of the architecture, and yet it's not a dry simplicity. It has warmth, it has gentleness even. It's very nice, and the trees, the plants are chosen magnificently. And look at this, this is a very refined architecture and a very refined landscape architecture. They are together, the tree and the house. The trees and the house. I don't know what trees these are, but they are sublime, you don't see the green part, you just see the slender trunks, but they are so lyrical and majestic at the same time. And, I don't know if my words do justice to what I see. I mean, even here, this is again paradise on earth. If these people, the inhabitants of this house, would also want to go with Elon Musk and the founder of Amazon or eBay, go to Mars, I would really not understand. I would not understand. I think it's a great house. And he bought, you know what he did? He exported Mexican sensitivity and culture and even spirituality in a way to North America. So, Mr. Trump, do you know about this house? This house is truly a great ambassador of a country which is more than just what you try to depict it is. This is the power of culture. It transcends frontiers. It is meaningless that president began to build a wall. Art breaks any wall through its quality. And this house was built by a Mexican architect in Los Angeles. But it's better than most buildings built in Los Angeles, by American or not American architects. I like it. It's a big house, yes. But it's not just the house. Look at those trees. I didn't even know such trees exist. They're like the sculptures of Giacometti, but less pessimistic, less morose, less self-centered. These trees they are just like the peacock's tail, beautiful because useless. And look at this picture, I'm beginning to fall in love with Legorreta just for this building. And I didn't love him before. I'm telling you, I knew of him, but I never interested. It's true, I'm not showing here other works by him, which are a little bit, in my opinion, predictably excessively chromatic and predictably a little commercial. But this work, I think, is excellent. Unfortunately, there are the quotations from Luis Barragan. This is one of them. And yes, the reference is a little bit too explicit, but it's okay. We can go further and still admire a house that arrived now at its last image. And with this, I end this introduction, because it's not more than an introduction to the work, I think, of a worthy Mexican architect, to whom we should wish happy birthday. Thank you.